Hey guys, it's Damien here from School of Attraction. Let me start by asking you a question. What is the difference between sexual escalation and sexual tension? I ask the question because it's a distinction that a lot of guys get wrong at critical moments in interactions with women, and it causes things to fall apart very quickly. So that's what I want to talk about today. So without burying the lead or getting into some sort of historical story first, let me just state straight up. Sexual escalation is a process that pushes a woman towards the act of sex. Sexual tension is a process that builds a woman's desire to have sex with you. It actually also builds your desire to have sex with her, but let's focus on the women here for a second. So that's the really big difference between the two. But the really big problem is that guys often conflate the two and treat them as though they're the same thing. Let me explain what this looks like. An average guy goes to a bar and he sees a woman he likes. He goes and starts talking to her. So they're talking, they're flirting, clearly she likes him a little bit. And the man starts to think, well, I'm going to have to start sexually escalating here, right? So what he does is he starts to maybe starts to touch her. Like he'll start by touching her shoulders, physical contact, her upper arms. And then he'll start to move to more intimate areas, maybe her hands or her waist, or maybe some bare leg skin. These more it's intimate areas to touch. And then he might try to hold her hand walking through a bar, or he might try to make out with her in the club. And in his head, he's thinking he's doing this for two reasons. He's doing it, one, because he wants to make her feel turned on so that she might have sex with her. And secondly, because he knows he needs to go through these steps in order to get to the place of having sex. And as a result of this thinking, at least once a week, I get an email or a message from a guy saying something like, Damien, I met a woman at a bar, but I didn't make out with her. Do you think she's lost interest? Or the guy will say, I went on a second date with a woman, but didn't get to second base with her. Do you think now she thinks that I'm not interested in her? And so these kind of messages come through. And I want to make something really, really, really clear. You can't have sexual escalation without sexual tension. But you can have sexual tension without sexual escalation. If sexual tension is not present and you attempt to sexually escalate, it is going to feel gross and disgusting to have the guy try to sexually escalate with you. It's a really critical thing to note because a lot of guys think that they have to try to sexually escalate no matter what. They think that it's the same thing as building sexual attraction, but it's not. And so what I see often happening with guys on dates is there's no sexual tension yet for whatever reason, and already he's trying to sexually escalate because he thinks that's what he has to do. But that's not what you have to do. Something that often surprises guys, back in the day when I'd be going out to bars and trying to pick up and bring women home, guys were really surprised that they rarely ever saw me making out with women in a club. This was kind of a feature of the me way of talking to women in bars. They'd never see that. They rarely saw me getting handsy, like sometimes, but it wasn't the normal thing, right? What would happen is guys would be in a bar, they'd see me talking to a woman. The woman was clearly interested in me, right? Like, if it was going to go somewhere. I'm not saying every woman's clearly interested in me, but in the circumstances where this would happen, the woman would be clearly interested, but I wouldn't be making out with her. I wouldn't be getting handsy with her. But just all of a sudden, the guys would look around and they'd be like, where did Damien go? What happened? And what happened was Damien left the bar with a girl. Guys were always surprised. And really what I was doing is, I was creating so much sexual tension in the interaction. Not sexual escalation, sexual tension. I was building massively her desire to have sex with me. So that at a certain point I could just say, you know what? I want to get you out of here. Let's go back to my place for a drink. And if the tension was high enough and she was open, because it's different, right? Just because her sexual tension is high doesn't mean she actually will. I mean, if she could be a Christian girl who wants to wait till marriage, and I could have built all the sexual tension in the world, and she really wants to sleep with me, but she won't because she's got something that's more important to her than that. So it doesn't mean that she will, but I've built all that sexual tension, and if she's the kind of woman who's open to it, I'm going to leave with her, and that's how it's going to work. And it doesn't require any sexual escalation, at least until I ask her to leave with me and have sex with me. It doesn't require any sexual escalation to happen beforehand. So a lot of guys are ruining their chances with women by sexually escalating instead of building sexual tension. Sexual escalation is really not that important, a series of steps. And what's more important is that if there's enough sexual tension, there's no magical way to sexually escalate. In fact, you can do almost anything. I think if you asked women that I've been with in my past, how smooth I was on sexual escalation, I think they'd say, not particularly. I don't think any of them go, wow, that guy was so smooth. I blinked and we were suddenly having sex. I don't know how that happened. I don't think they'd say that. I think I'm a little bit on the clunky side. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter if you have the sexual tension there. None of it matters. Okay, so how do you build sexual tension? I hear you asking me, how does that happen? Well, the first thing you need to know is that if you are a really, 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 really hot guy, and the second she sees you, she bites her lip and is like, mama would like me a little bit of that, then you've already got tons of sexual tension in the air, and there's not a lot that you have to do, but don't stop watching, because you can rarely have too much sexual tension. The more sexual tension you have, the better the sex is, the more engaged she is, the less, I guess the less apprehension there'll be, all this kind of stuff. So you can rarely have too much sexual tension. And the other thing I need to say before I talk about ways to build sexual tension is that sexual tension is like a fire. If you want to build a bigger fire, you need to start with a small fire, right? You need to have some kind of fire. You can't just will fire into existence out of nothing, which means that the ways that I would build sexual tension only work if she's open to sexual tension existing. If a woman sees me and on site, maybe she thinks I'm, nice to talk to, but on site, she has written me off for some reason. I'm not her type. Maybe she only likes really tall guys and I'm too short for her. She doesn't like guys with facial hair, whatever it is, and it's a complete turn off for her. If she's decided that she's not open to it, I can do all the sexual tension stuff that I like. I can try it, but it's not going to build sexual tension. It's not going to go. She's not going to respond well to it because she's just not open to it. So if there's not a little bit of fire that you can fan the flames and build it up into something big, then you're dead in the water. So that has to be there first before any sexual tension will work. Okay, so here are some of the things that I use regularly. And I say use because I still do, but now I'm looking for a relationship. I'll do this more, on later dates, because I'm not trying to speed up the process of getting laid. I'm trying to process the connection. But whether you want something casual, one night stand or casual sex, or if it's a relationship you're looking for, the basic process of building sexual tension needs to be there, right? Sexual tension has to be there in any kind of sexual relationship between two people. So here are some things to think about. Sexual banter and playfulness. So, making jokes that are around sexuality and nature are really great. Stories that you can tell that are sexual, ideally sexual and funny, but your stories that have a sexual undertone, right? The topic of sex in conversation helps to build sexual tension. A well-placed compliment. Again, don't just approach a woman and go, oh, wow, you're hot. That's not what I mean. I mean, finding something about her and giving her a compliment on that at the right time, right? So if I'm going to compliment a woman on something about her body, could be her butt or her boobs even, something really, really sexually direct. I've got to pick a moment for it. I'm not going to do it the second I approach. I'll do it later on when there's already some tension in the air. It's a way to fan it up and build it up, right? But well-chosen compliments. Things like even a prolonged eye contact during a silence in the conversation, just giving her that really intense eye contact for a moment, a cheeky smile at a right time, some non-sexual physical touch, right? Like incidental physical touch just while you're doing things. If there's already tension in the air, enhances the tension. Things like being close to her, like physically in very close proximity, like maybe your faces are really close to each other, but you don't try to do anything sexual. So you don't sexually escalate. There's just that moment of physical proximity and then you break it and move apart. That creates sexual tension. So there are a lot of these little things, and really primarily I personally lean on talking. So I do sexual banter in the beginning. Then what I do is I will find some direct compliments to give, ones that really work. I rely on some very heavy eye contact at right moments, usually around the compliment or around the sexual banter. They're the things I really rely on the most when I'm trying to build sexual tension. And the other thing I do also is I'll talk about topics that are sexual in nature. So for example, I might talk about how interesting it is when I travel, the way different people think about sex and sexuality, right? If it's a conservative culture, if it's a very open culture, and the different ways that gets expressed in different cultures. It's a topic that is sexual in nature, but not about sex. So I'm bringing sexuality into the conversation regularly, and if she's responding well and digging and jumping into this conversation with me, it's demonstration that she's enjoying my attempt to build tension. So that's all I'm going to say on the how to build tension. And the reason is I think I'd like to make a separate video about it. I don't want this one to draw out too long. If you'd like me to make this video on how, exactly step by step, how to build that tension, let me know. I think it's a critical message, and I think that when it comes to topics of sex and sexual escalation, there is a ton of cringe content on YouTube that if any woman watch it, she'll be like, oh, that's kind of gross. Don't be telling guys to do that. And I feel that way a lot myself when I watch a lot of the content. So it's probably been valuable for me to make it. If you'd like me to, let me know in the comments below, guys, please. Because if there's enough of you wanting me to make it, I'll go ahead and make that video. If you like this content, give me a thumbs up, like my video. Definitely check out my website, schoolofattraction.com. I'll give you a link down below and you can check out some of the training programs that I offer. For the rest, guys, I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something interesting today. Let me know in the comments if you want to add to it, and I will see you in my future videos.